Welcome back to the Wirex Crypto Podcast, the show where we dive into the latest trends and innovations in the world of crypto, AI, and Web3. I'm your host, Lianna Adams, and today we have a special guest who is at the forefront of two of the most transformative technologies in business, AI and blockchain. We're thrilled to be joined by Ivan Sun, the CEO of ARQx AI, a company that's using these technologies to shape the future of commerce. Today, we'll explore how AI and blockchain are revolutionizing the way we do business, from removing middlemen to creating new opportunities for small businesses and big players alike. Ivan, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here.
Hello. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. So before we dive in, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your journey and how you got into AI and blockchain and maybe ARQ.
Yes, sure thing. To go back in the time machine a little bit. I went to college. My whole life I've been an artist. I went to film school in college, but simultaneously also had a very technical mind. So I thought I wanted to go into, work in Hollywood and film production. And then after school, a lot of my friends went to work in entertainment in Los Angeles. But I actually stayed. I was in Boston at the time. I ended up working at a company called HubSpot, and really wanted to actually put my creative skills to use in the technical and startup world. So I've always been have this dual mindset of technology and art, and the cross section of those is really where I've been excited my whole career to work. And then, starting ARQ was like the perfect kind of combination of both of those things. So, and in my career, basically, was East Coast startup, in the US East Coast startup, world, and West Coast, lived in Los Angeles as well for a time. And then also worked in a lot of fintech and investing companies. And as one does, if you work in investing, traditional investing, eventually you learn about crypto technologies, especially in the late 2010s, early 2020s. And so it kind of brought me to Bitcoin. And then that really, once you start learning about Bitcoin and crypto technologies, that's how you go down the rabbit hole. You take the orange pill, as they say, then you can, it's like Alice in Wonderland, falling deep down there. So I really just kind of knew. I always love looking. Just beyond being a regular nerd, always love looking at where the trajectory of industries is headed, and just having the experience in the financial field in traditional investing. I just knew how much not just crypto was a flash in the pan, but how it was going to really change. So that was I already knew that I was going to want to leave the traditional finance industry for crypto, and so it kind of led me down there. Started working for some different companies in Web3. And then just love during, the big NFT boom, love seeing all of the creativity come into play, because that's something that prior to, 2020, 2021, there wasn't a lot of, it was very finance based, very DeFi focused. And then NFTs, they're crazy, the crazy world of NFTs. But there's so much, I love seeing the art, the film, the people doing comic books, all of the things that I loved, growing up, and, what I wanted to do in my career. Actually seeing that enter the Web3 space was really, really interesting. And again, also was this moment of wow, this is going to continue to change things. This is, we're mixing different, amazing alchemist chemicals here and getting something totally brand new. So that really was another kind of big moment of seeing how, crypto wasn't just DeFi, and it was bigger than that. And that even it was sucking in, the world of entertainment, how that was going to change many things and get, baked in and get decentralized. So there's a kind of theme I love, and I can get into this a little bit more, but of decentralization, that DeFi playbook, and how it's disrupting different industries, and how crypto is just kind of just the swirling vortex that's sucking all of that stuff in.
That's amazing. I always love to learn about how people get into the space and the motivation behind that journey, right? What excites you most about how AI and blockchain are shaping the future of commerce.
Yeah, so it's a great segue into this kind of next, like the we and looking in these chapters. You have the DeFi chapter, then the NFT, the kind of art, swirling in last cycle, and then obviously AI is such a feature of this current cycle and just the world in general. And that really was this moment of, but when I started ARQ, of looking at, it was very early on that I kind of was started experimenting with AI in general. And I, was actually doing, again, as an artist, I was like, oh my God, this is, a lot of people were looking at the AI like ChatGPT of, oh, this is going to change, information technologies. It's going to change development. But I was like, this is going to change storytelling. This is going to change brand development. This is going to change graphic design, all these visual industries. And I was like, this is going to change e-commerce as well and manufacturing. So I kind of really, just realized how much it was, this was a force for, letting any person become, a designer, become a creator really easily. So very early on, even when DALL-E was early, I was like, I already kind of had the early facet, early concepts of ARQ, of, creating something, a physical e-commerce company that uses and leveraged AI and blockchain technology. But to come back to your question, yeah, I think, there's so many different ways that companies obviously are using, going to be starting to use AI in general. The big thing for me that I really see that's powerful is that it's a force multiplier. I think some like the best beneficiaries right now are small teams, small, people want to pump and punch above their weight, people that can't afford, we traditionally have this, you bootstrap your way, you grind with a very small team, and then eventually maybe you can get funding, and then and then try to like actually turn it into a real company. And I think nowadays we're gonna have a lot more, like, even if you're a 1 or 2 person company, you can kind of start hiring these AI agents and bring on a lot more more people to help with the company, and do a lot more, put out a lot more materials. And then, I think we'll see, companies be able to ramp into full staffed companies a lot easier versus having to bootstrap forever. But yeah, those are just one of the many things. And then I think with, a lot of, the e-commerce industry and, in some of those industries, we're really just seeing the very early fruits of it. Take the video game industry, for instance. AI is just totally changing the way that, assets are developed. Games are going to get a lot cheaper. Independent gaming, I think, is about to go through a mega renaissance of seeing like one single gamers alone in their house, like working from home, build demos and parts of games that look like they're done by, a 30-person studio. So all of these things are just like really going to accelerate the rate at which development happens across different industries and be a force multiplier for small teams.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, you're right. With the rise of AI, it's allowed all of us, right, to embrace the artist in all of us. I
Yes.
would say,
You can be a creative director or art director. Like, it's so
yeah,
fun.
the and the possibilities are endless, right? It really depends on how you want to use the AI,
Yes.
um so can maybe can you explain how blockchain actually removes the need for middlemen, and are there any downsides for users?
Yeah, I think so. I think blockchain and AI are just a perfect combination because both of them have this, if they were like an element property, it's like kind of a middle finger to the middlemen and the established gatekeepers. So, blockchain technology does that really, really well with, you don't need to, you can, just, it's a, trustless, system that you can, really be transacting, doing trustless, all kinds of business operations without needing that big bank or the middleman, someone to rubber stamp these different things. So, it's really scary for people that kind of are monopolies and people that make their money off of, pushing papers around. Because if you can go around them, then you don't need those people. So that's why DeFi is like is so exciting, so effective. And there's even, there's dozens of, government organizations around the world that are terrified of this because they have a multitude of stakeholders who their whole lives is like, wait, if you take our ability to, push papers around and, extort, small businesses, then like, what are we going to do? We're going to melt away. It's like, pouring water on the witch. And AI does very similar, has very similar properties as well. So combining those things together, there's so many industries. Like I speak about, we're familiar with big banking, but we're also, to go back to Hollywood, entertainment, there is like, I know this even on this call, and it's an international panel of people, and I, every day in Web3, you're working with people all around the world. It's such a interesting, great place to be, and I think you get so much, that's one of my favorite things about Web3. But entertainment, for instance, every single movie, even if you're watching movies in Asia, in Africa, like all of those movies are made in one little town in, United States. And I guess it's not a very little town, but honestly, we think of Los Angeles as a mega city, but the part of the people that are directly controlling, it's a very small part of, Century City, like in a very small part of Los Angeles, and there's like a couple big buildings that house all of those people. So you have this massive amount of gatekeeping in entertainment, and then the same thing for the fashion industry and the luxury industry. You walk through if you at an airport, you go through the mall, and there's just like a very small quantity of brands that have this monopoly on the entire world's flow of luxury goods, like the handbags and the jewelry and all of that stuff. In the fashion industry as well, if you want to work in the fashion industry, you have to move to Paris or New York City, and you have to figure out the right people to know and really work your way up in that society. But you can't start, it's hard to start a fashion brand from South America or from different parts of the Middle East. So I think all of these things are really, really exciting because, combining AI and blockchain, it's like, okay, we can build the technical infrastructure, we can build a financial infrastructure, the IP, intellectual property infrastructure using blockchain, and then we can ramp up our creativity and, be more creative. Let anyone, you don't have to, you're just mentioning that you can be it's fun to be creative with AI. It's like everyone can be an art director, everyone can be a creative director. You don't need to go to art school for 4 years and have what college did you go to? Let me see your portfolio. It's like, no, anyone, has the right to be creative. So combining those things together, I think we're going to see the power of these centralized industries like Hollywood, fashion industries, luxury industries kind of seep out into the world, and anyone can be able to, and then it's just meritocracy. So the best stuff ends up winning versus, how deep are you in the power structure?
Yeah, I love the what you said about AI. I feel like, yeah, are you an artist and which school do you go to? Like, I went to the
Yeah.
school of AI.
Exactly. I love that, where it's like it feels like some kind of cool, like I don't know, like Oliver Twist or something. It's like it should, I love, the rags to riches story is like it's not just an American story. It's it's a worldwide story, and I think it's so powerful. And I think we're going to see more of that. I love the ability is, oh, what school did you study fashion at? What institute? And it's like, I didn't do anything. I'm just like, it's all about the results. It's all about how hard you're willing to work.
Yeah, and I think, with that in mind, right, like it does cut out that whole the way we measure through status or through
Yes.
and obviously like before it's which school did you go to, right? And then it
Mhm.
moved on to what job and whatever. But in coming back to the middleman,
Yeah.
like with the artists, right, like for example and this is what I've come across before. Sure, yes, we don't want the middleman, and because we want to have sovereignty, right?
Yes.
But there are challenges as well because, obviously with the artists, in the traditional sense, they had the middlemen to take care of all the marketing, all the bookings, and the whole business side of things, right? So I think, there is people today using AI, there's a lot more education that needs to be done. And I think, sometimes, it's a really interesting space to observe, right? And just to track, because I think philosophically as well, like, we just want to have our sovereignty, but at the same time, I think we're also used to that mindset of having other people to do certain parts of the business, right? Like we don't have to, So, and I think,
those could be collaborators too. Like that type of middleman. It's like that sounds like a value add. Like I think that's if you're an artist and you can get someone to do, your taxes. Like I think that that's great. But I think the people who are offering zero value, just shuffling the papers around and taking a percentage off the top. Like I think those people are going to be some of the first to go.
Yeah, definitely. Because, in a way with blockchain and AI, they'll be redundant, right?
Yeah.
So, and if we get rid of the middleman, right, who really benefits, and how do we avoid creating new gatekeepers? Because ultimately, new gatekeepers will emerge, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why meritocracy is so important and not, de-emphasizing status and, looking at the results and what people have accomplished or what a company is working on versus, who do they know or, kind of that stuff. So I think, unfortunately, I think we have a human instinct somehow of, to defer to status. It's kind of like a legacy, fragment of our programming. But
and kind of like virtue signaling as well, right? In some sense,
Of course, virtue signaling of who there's so many, if not just what you're doing, but what do you care about and stuff, and do you fit into this little tribe, and then can you kind of leverage your way up in that hierarchy? So I mean, unfortunately, I don't think any of that stuff is going away anytime soon. I think the best thing though now is that, like, again, not to just be like, oh my god, Web3 is so great, but I love just putting things out into like the open. Like it's kind of like, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and it's like instead of kind of having these different organizations or these different cultures that are kind of, squirreled away that no one really, also, I think no one really understand. If people don't understand stuff, then they also get, it's like, it's so strange and inaccessible. And they put some kind of mystique to it. I don't know, like a Sotheby's, auction house. I just saw, like they were auctioning off that banana.
Man. Yeah. Oh man. Like, okay. I'm gonna reserve. I'm gonna reserve my.
I'd love your thoughts on that.
I'm maybe as a we'll talk offline on this.
Okay.
Because yes, I have my thoughts.
Spicy podcast.
I think it's a little bit ridiculous.
It is. I agree, and I don't think you have to be afraid to say that, because it's like the emperor's. Are you familiar with the emperor?
Yes,
where
he clothes.
Yeah. So if everyone goes along with it, and everyone says, oh my god, the banana is so amazing, then we trick ourselves into thinking that it is, and then you even feel like scared to say that it's not cool.
Yeah.
And then one person, there's like that meme of like the guy standing up. I think it's like Norman Rockwell painting or something. But there's the guy, standing up at the meeting. Everyone's seated, and he's like the one voice that's not afraid. And he's like, I don't think the banana is cool. And and then all of a sudden everyone else stands up with him. So again, it's not even to like I admire I almost feel like art like that is more like trolling. Like
Yeah,
some
it is definitely a like trolling, right?
yeah.
Like
So I'm like, good, like,
yeah.
dude, make these people pay. It's like, if you're that like crazy to do that, then like I don't actually blame the artist necessarily that much. It's more of like just the absurdity that this has been reduced to. So
Yeah, but then, art is also can be seen as just absurd, right? One man's treasure is another man's right?
yeah, well, I mean, this is a great. We could go for hours on the philosophical art and stuff. But well, yeah. So I mean, it's a fascinating conversation, but I also think it's like inaccessible when you see that room of people. Like again, nothing against like the billionaires or anyone in the wealthy individuals, but it is very inaccessible. You can't get into that room unless certain people or you have a certain net worth and stuff like that. So it like locks out, the vast
Yeah,
majority of people. So I think that more is like an example, like they're trying to use that as an example of just like these strange, shadowy kind of things of like, no one really knows how, someone's gotten in there or stuff like that. It
yeah,
kind of like becomes a cabal and stuff like that. So I think those kind of things are really, are worth, breaking up. And I think I just love that, it's like going, the origins of like it's like democracy or anyone, the plebiscites can have a role. I think we joke about plebs and, in our culture and stuff, but really it's like having a stake at the table and like, you shouldn't be judged on, who you are, your status, or, like what caste you're from. You should be judged on, what your interests are. And, and again, like that's why some of these newer industries, I think, are much more meritocratic and very, much more open to that stuff, which I really, really love.
yeah. And I think also it's all about giving people that equal access, right, to
Mhm.
opportunities. And then what they do with that opportunity is up to them, but when we have that barrier from the start, and I guess that's the gatekeepers. But I also wanted to make a slight distinction between gatekeepers and perhaps custodians or stewards of,
Yes.
for example, a collective, like art collective or whatever. Because
No,
that,
that's a really important distinction. Thank you for making that. Yeah.
yeah. So it's because I feel like we still need some kind of quality control.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? On all sectors, because we can't just have like yeah, I come back to quality control and being custodians and making sure that everything is being done in a in a way that's with integrity and
Mhm.
accountability, right? So with AI being often seen as centralized, and while blockchain promotes decentralization, how do the two work together in creating a new way of doing business?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of different scenarios, a lot of, I mean, what I feel like we've done right now is kind of like this primordial soup of like mixing different ingredients. There's gonna be a lot of different life forms that, congeal out of what's happening right now. So it's like we're in the petri dish. So it's like, difficult to say necessarily all of the different ways it's gonna happen, but I think there's a lot of really fascinating ones. You're again just seeing so much different creative, strange progress. I feel like every time you go on X or Twitter, you're like there's some crazy thread about how someone, did something that seems, completely unthinkable with either technology or simulations or development that we've never seen before. Things that would take, years to do, people are doing in their bedroom, over the weekend. So we just see it's just this absurd kind of acceleration. Would can don't have to get into the scary side of it too much, but it's really unpredictable of what we're seeing. But I think all we can do really is like lean on and build these, as many positive experiences as possible. But as you just mentioned, I think we've we again kind of just founding, like before founding ARQ and in the midst of it, and as we are doing it, building currently, we're trying to like lean on the, it's like push, go to the side of the car that you want it to turn to, and lean as hard as you can. So we really, to bring it back to the every man and every woman, giving them, I think that one of the most powerful thing is to give them the tools and the skill sets to be creative and to start their own endeavors. So yeah, I mean, even our platform, and just to like rewind a little bit, I know we kind of hop into everything right away, but the ARQ has a couple different platforms, but all of our different platforms are built on letting any person be able to become a designer, and not just a graphic designer or a digital asset designer, but design physical real world objects. So that's where we differentiate between ourselves, and there's so many cool AI startups currently, but we're one of the few that are actually working on physical items. So our mobile application, which is our flagship product, and it's in iOS and Android, lets anyone, again, we have this kind of rule, in my as having a background in UX UI design, we really want to make this as user centric as possible. And our platform lets anyone from 8 to 80, we like to say, that's our age range, is like even really from the very young to the very old, is let that 8 to 80 range, anyone download the app within a couple minutes, be able to design physical products. So right now we have the ability to design jewelry, luxury items, and then we're adding a lot of different items. So you'll be able to design toys, stuffed animals, fashion items, and then we have manufacturing around the world that actually helps us produce this really easily, really quickly. So that's really the kind of crux, is like we're talking about the gatekeeping and stuff. So instead of having to, there's just millions of people around the world who have ideas for stuff of, oh, I want to create, I want to launch my own jewelry line. I want to launch my own e-commerce startup. And yes, you can, learn Shopify. You can, sometimes you have to quit your job. You have to work nights and weekends to try to figure this stuff out. You have to do courses. Then you have to invest a lot of time and money too into figuring out the pipeline, figuring out how to do drop shipping maybe, but even that, it's a lot of people want to start their own original products. So our platform just lets you do that within 15 minutes. You can start designing your products and selling them really, really quickly. And it's a really, really fun process too. So you mentioned, like the process of designing with AI is fun, and so it's not, shouldn't be a chore. It should be really fun and exciting. But this is the ability to let any person, whether you're from Nigeria, Argentina, anywhere in the world, Mongolia, you can download the application and immediately launch an e-commerce startup designed with original, new, custom luxury items, not having to wait for someone else to design these things, or invest your life savings. So really, that's what we're trying to push on, the be the standard bearer for the gatekeeping and disruption in the world of physical product development and e-commerce. So that's like one, just to use ourselves as an example. But I think we're going to see so many, and I know we're not going to be the only AI e-commerce or product development startup. I'm welcoming the growth of the space, but I think these different, if you have the right, I think, ethos and kind of mission to disrupt and let anyone become the next famous fashion designer. I think those, we're going to create some really exciting stories in the next few years.
Yeah, I think it's really and what you have there is really leveling the playing field, right, for anyone to come in and and let their imagination go wild with designing stuff.
Exactly.
And it really helps, and when you have that kind of agency and ownership, it really allows you to dream further, right? And I think, we need that in the world today.
Right. And Lianna, I think even you mentioned that dreaming thing. I think that was so, again, even bringing, trying to bring my, having my personal experiences and experiences with friends and family, that I've met through my life. is that, I've had many experiences of like, oh my God, I would love to launch, I would love to build action figures when I was a kid, and there's all these kind of dreams that we have. And that's why I love that word that you said, dreams, is that so many people dream. We're just such an imaginative, that's kind of like one of the founding principles of what makes us human. But so often, once you learn, like when you're a kid, that's the beauty of being a kid. You have a big imagination. You want to, conquer the world. You want to do, you know, you want to travel to space, you want to start all these companies. But then when you get to be an adult, you realize how difficult everything is. And the unfortunate stuff is like we see it's like a lot of people give up on their dreams, and they give up on being an artist, they give up on being a musician, and then they have to go and the reality of the world. And I don't think there's anything, I know we denigrate I have to go get a 9 to 5 job. And it's like, that's just the reality of the world. Like if an animal, if a squirrel, I'm looking at my window, if a squirrel doesn't go like find all the nuts that like, and squirrel them away for the winter, they're not gonna make it through the winter. So I don't think there's anything bad about getting a 9 to 5. I think sometimes we say, it sucks that we have to work all the time when we should just be able to be artists. And I think instead of saying, oh, you should quit your job and, try to do this stuff, I think we can, with this new technology, I think we can have our cake and eat it too. So it's like we can have our regular careers and we can have our creative careers simultaneously without having to choose between the two, which is really exciting. And I think that's the kind of stuff of going back to the dreaming thing of where we don't have to give up on our dreams. We can, be living our dreams and our reality simultaneously. And, hopefully our dreams can eclipse that and become our full reality.
Yeah, I think, like you made a really good point, because most of the time people choose, to let go of their dreams because they need that security, right? And also pressures from, family or society, whatever.
Exactly.
And I love the fact that, with this, you can still have your security, but also have the time to play and to keep dreaming. And I think that's really such a wonderful thing. And it's going to be great for humanity, yeah. So that's really, really cool. I'm just really trying to like digest and like, whoa.
Yeah, no, it's a lot to digest, because it's like these are kind of constants. They're not, these are constant just facts of life that we've always lived, and now that's potentially changing. So it takes a little time to like, oh my God, if we change that, then like what happens with this? So I totally understand of these like kind of this game theory that we have to play out in our mind, as we adjust these variables.
Yeah, and also I think there's a recalibration period as well, because we are so used to doing things in a certain way, and now when we're presented with something that really allows us to step into, places where we couldn't before, right? Where it was gate-kept. Where, if you didn't have resources or the contacts, it's an exclusive club, right? And now it's just, everyone is, it's just the equal access. I just love that, how can we ensure that AI-driven commerce is fair, right? And it doesn't leave small businesses or users behind, because, I think people will be peopling, and
people will be peopling.
and that there will be times when people use technology for their own gains, right? And as a result, that becomes unfair, and it cuts out some smaller businesses maybe. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of way we, talk about how this can help, the smaller people, the small businesses, the independents. But you're right. We also have to be vigilant on how this could harm people as well. I think, the momentum right now is in favor of small businesses and independent artists and thinkers and entrepreneurs, because big businesses, they're much slower to change. You have your cases like BlackBerry, that had, all the opportunity in the world to make an iPhone, but, resisted because they wanted that keyboard. That was just the way things were. And they never were able to catch up after that. And, many, other examples of that as well. And I think so, fortunately, in this, as of right now, there's a lot of, momentum on the big businesses. They have massive, payrolls, big staff, and they kind of just like the machine wants, will want to protect itself, its status quo. They're less, adept to change overnight. So right now, I think there's a lot of favor of, like we talked about, of small entrepreneurs, people who want to start something, and then even small businesses who, mom and pop businesses, and small, whether they're agencies or startups that I think can again compete with bigger businesses because they can force multiply and use AI to make their workers more efficient, get be able to get more creative, get more done without necessarily having to pay dozens of more people, which they just don't have the capital to do. But I think for your kind of devil's advocacy, what happens in a couple of years, what, after AI has been around for a longer time, these big businesses, they also are in the business of saving money. So that's this is where you get into the kind of scary stuff of like big job cuts of like, can they fire big parts of their employees, which is, sucks because we don't want to go into a, employment downward spiral. And could they get so efficient, could they employ AI to such an extent that they stamp out their smaller competition? So I totally see where the potential for wariness is of like, some of these, whether it's Walmart or I don't know, it's just like you're hearing of giant tech companies, Google, do they employ AI to such an extent that, we thought it was going to help the small people, but actually the big businesses got so efficient that they were able to block out all of the competition. I think that, that's definitely a concern. I think it's something we should be wary of. And I think there's a couple of different things that you can guard against that. I think that's why, one thing is community. I think that's something that's so important. So if we, try again to steer the ship towards meritocracy and we steer the ship towards, embracing newcomers and, helping each other in this, small businesses and startups and communities welcoming each other, that could be our uniting factor against, the giant corporations that, maybe want to like stamp out all of any new coming competition. So I think community can be a really good factor in this of like uniting across the globe for, small businesses and working with each other and entrepreneurship. I think it can be really, really powerful. And then of course there's, a lot of this stuff gets into monopoly law as well. And I think that's, I'm not in favor of huge governments doing, giant overbloated bureaucracies. But one thing is important is monitoring monopolies. Because if you get, that can happen. You have one company that just like soaks up and becomes like its own, non-governmental organization of all facets. And I think that's something that we definitely have to guard against. And thankfully, there's existing laws, and then I think we should totally agree. I think we should evolve the existing laws to like encompass, artificial intelligence as well to prevent, any kind of competition from ever disrupting that kind of stuff. So I think the big things, community and, enough government, not too much, but enough government regulation as well to, guard against that.
Yeah, and I guess, with the governance, it's really to have them as allies to look up the smaller people to make sure that, they're not getting cut off, right? And that it remains fair. And I kind of think about also the in terms of small businesses, I think the trick here is sustainability in terms of how can they sustain the business, right? Because, as we've we've seen so many businesses, small businesses in this space have, come up and have closed, and they're no longer around. And because they couldn't sustain
Yeah.
the business, right?
Yeah, you get
So
over your skis, you overdevelop, you burn too much capital, then you can't sustain that, and you, yeah,
yeah.
fly too
So I
high to
think
the sun.
yeah, I think there's a balance. There needs to be a balance. And again, I kind of come back to education because, maybe these small businesses, they don't know what they don't know, right? So yeah, it's interesting. You're
Yeah.
making me think a fair bit, like, oh, like, and then what's next, and how can we mitigate that if there's even an opportunity to. But yeah, so like, big companies like Amazon, they do dominate global commerce, right? Do you see them adapting to decentralization anytime soon? Or do you think, new players will take over?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, this is kind of what we're trying to build with ARC. As I think, like, from a broad perspective, you can look at ARC from as like a layer one, for the future of commerce and e-commerce, with physical goods. Like, that's what we're really trying to build. Is we don't want to be necessarily the brand, like, that you're recognized. I don't want to be a competitor to Amazon, but we want to more provide the tools to let people compete with Amazon. Does that make sense? Um,
Yeah.
where we're the blank canvas that you can, use and build the ideal, your own product, your own brand. I think, even in something that we talk about too in Web3 is we have this, a goal of letting, are you familiar with Pudgy Penguins at all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were just like, I mean, they're a great success story, and they're one of like the NFT brands that like survived from the cycle. And how did they survive? They became a physical brand. They got into toys, they got into collectibles, they got into physical brick and mortar stores. And I think that's something that's so powerful and like has saved their brand, solidified it long run. And I think, with what ARC's looking to do is actually let other brands, all kinds of brands, and especially including in Web3, actually make that transition to serve, actually, if you're, even if you're a meme coin or, some kind of, any other kind of brand, to meme coin NFT, collection, to be able to transition. Pudgy Penguins had to invest, months or years and millions of dollars in investment to make that jump, and it was very risky. But with ARC and new technologies like 3D printing, we can actually help, companies transition to that a lot faster, and a lot easier. No, very like, almost no upfront costs. Instead of millions of dollars, you're paying, maybe a few hundred, to make that transition. And I think, that's really where we see this going, is being able to provide that technological layer to let Web3 brands, existing brands, solidify, jump into the physical product space, start merchandising, start, selling to their fan base, start breaking out and creating a new fan base. I think that's one of the most important things that we don't do enough in Web3 is we sell to each other, but we need to be selling and building cool experiences for, the mainstream retail world. And doing all of those things, I think Amazon is extremely big and powerful, and there's going to be other Amazons to come. But, that's always the debate. I think, with, decentralization versus centralization, I think you get, certain aspects that are really good for centralization, but you're not going to get the creativity that comes with decentralization. You're not going to get the redundancy. There might be, what one little thing could crash, like, could really hurt Amazon, versus if you have, a million nodes of e-commerce that are created. Even, Shopify is much more decentralized. It's a software product. It's not really, that, but, there's this notion in, e-commerce that, if you have your product on Amazon it could get banned or it could get, put on the, page 3 and no one's going to find it. But if you own your own Shopify and you build your own fan base, then you're never gonna stop selling. You're never gonna be able to be banned. So I think those kind of things are so much more powerful. So, I would take a big army of creative individuals any day over one single centralized company, which they come and go, but the creativity of a million 2 million people doesn't sunset easily. You can have nodes come drop in, drop out, and scale it, and I think those solutions are really going to be, we've never seen we haven't had the technology to enable to even be able to experience that. So I think that's really going to be the decentralization of all of these different systems of e-commerce, of fulfillment globally, even Filecoin, and these things of decentralizing data storage and servers are going to be very important for this next phase. But yeah, I think it's just the redundancy. I think these giant mega corporations are going to be very powerful in the future, but they're also very vulnerable, and they can just get, again, coming back to the BlackBerry thing, no one ever thought BlackBerry was going to get disrupted, and then it just got smoked within a few years. But, it's a lot harder to do that when you have millions of creative individuals all, vying and, fighting for to build amazing creative brands.
Yeah, and I suppose the really beautiful thing about this is these small businesses using ARQ, they don't have to worry about inventory or and fulfillment, which all costs money, right?
Yeah, the headaches, all of that stuff. Like, yeah, we you outsource it to us, and even the way we're building is in a scalable, node based process as well. That we're not trying to be this giant, centralized company as well. So it's up and down the organization and the pipeline. But yeah, you completely nailed it on the head. That's a huge barrier to entry of people who've ever tried to start or sell anything online, of like doing your own inventory, doing your own fulfillment, is such a pain in the neck and stops a lot of people from being able to, again, if you're like a scrappy meme coin brand, there's no way for you to really launch e-commerce products, but now you're able to kind of compete and become that next Pudgy Penguin story.
Yeah, and you don't have to worry about, your MOQs.
Yeah,
right. And then you're limited, because I've got to order this much. I can't make these different varieties so I think, yeah, it does allow, businesses to really tap into the creativity. And, I think it's great that you're, kind of like, I almost see ARQ also as like a little toolbox, right? Like as a little toolkit that people can use, and it's and it's like a little Mary Poppins kind of bag, right? Like a toolbox, and then you open it and it's a full business.
Yeah, I love that. Exactly. It's like we have this like little commercial in that we in some of our materials about this like 14-year-old girl during class, during her lunch period, launching her own jewelry brand, getting inspired by fruit at the lunch table, launching it, posting on TikTok, and then selling $500 worth of jewelry by the end of the day, after she gets picked up from school. But I really think that's the future. Where we're headed is like young, old, every kind of, busy, non-busy people to be able to have the accessibility to, the world of e-commerce. I think is really kind of this next level of not having to, she doesn't have to worry about any of those headaches that normally, and again, from personal experience, these are all, learned lessons of like, you hit these brick walls and you just set minimum, like MOQ, which for those who don't know is minimum order quantity. And that's usually what you're dealing with if you wanted to make a custom product, if you wanted to make a custom stuffed animal from a factory. You can't just order one of them. You usually have to order, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand of them. So even if you want to make, I just want one of these, or I want to, launch a new toy line or a new fashion line, you end up having to pay, $10,000 usually upfront for the factory. And that'd be cheap, but the factory to actually take on your order. And that's a huge barrier to entry. And like with new technology and new manufacturing techniques, we can do one pieces at a time without having to do that massive amount of, kind of those orders, which are just like killer for you. Basically get excited, get creative. You make your website, you try to launch a product, then you go, oh my God, I don't have that kind of money. And then you get sad. You get sad. It would close the website down, and then just like you give up, and then you give up on your dream. So that's it goes back to the dream part.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to keep that dream alive and whatever way possible, right? I love it. So if you had to predict one major milestone in this space over the next decade, what would it be?
Do you want my the you want the optimistic or you want the pessimistic one?
Well, we can have both.
Yeah, I actually think there's a good philosophical. Let me do the pessimistic first, then we'll end on the positive note. I think because things are getting cheaper and everything's the scary thing is we approach like a singularity of like everything, even we have pump.fun right now that's like kind of the big meta in this cycle where everyone's making new meme coins and it's so cheap and easy to launch meme coins that like there's people that have theorized eventually every possible meme coin that you could ever think of will be created. So you have this strange thing where almost this abuse of the creativity and freedom where things turn into kind of this gray goo of creativity where there's so much stuff everywhere. And I think that's like would be a sad feature. I also think that like we mentioned, the mega corporations kind of super powering their being the ones that are creating the AI, so then they they have these ultra intelligent AIs that can outcompete all of the small businesses who aren't getting access to those new AI features. So I think that's also a little, a feature that we have to be very wary of. And so I think there's some very interesting spaces. Like as we go forward, we have to be. There's kind of like you're walking down the middle of the road, and on the either side of the road, there's like big ditches that you could fall into. So we do have to be careful and like work. I think that's why we're working as a community and building towards a responsible future is really, really important. And I think we can definitely do that. Then on the positive note, I think I would say, the exciting future is that there's just, we talked about, it's like there's I think removing the limits to creativity around the world and removing the gatekeeping and if you like, there's like in the next 5 years, you're going to have someone in Tanzania make the next Hollywood blockbuster movie like Avengers, because the barriers to entry are going to be lower and lower with whether it's actors and set design and special effects. You don't need to move to Los Angeles, move your home in leave your home in Tanzania and move across the world just to, try to enter that industry. You're going to be able to create these amazing Hollywood blockbusters from your own town, from your own computer, your tablet basically. So I'm really excited about that feature. In the next famous fashion designer is going to come from could come from anywhere globally without having to again move to Paris or New York. So I love that. I think that's the most bright optimistic future is that the dream for entrepreneurship. We're talking about AI supercharging, but we're gonna bring on massive amounts of new generations of people who haven't had access to the creativity and these different industries at all, because again they're geographically gate kept, and that for me is like the really exciting part, is that we're gonna see this renaissance of art, industry, creativity, all coming from all around the globe.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that it will foster a kind of being people being more mindful and being more cognizant and intentional in what they want to produce and purchase, right? Because then it's about because then it's quality as well, right? Like
Yes. That's a great
to
point,
shift
Liliana.
that mindset that that we're not buying these $3 t-shirts
No, that is
in
such
a
a good point.
sweatshop.
No, that's such a good point, and actually something I sometimes I talk about and neglected to bring up today. But thank you. That's like it's so important. I think that's a byproduct, but also like such an important mission to all of this is that people buy stuff, but they throw it away because they didn't make it. They didn't have any connection with it. But if you're the one who's designing your clothes, if you're the one designing your jewelry, you're not gonna, I think we're gonna see an end. Like my hope is an end to fast fashion and like people be more creative. And if you enable someone to be creative and they're making those items for themselves or for their loved ones, then you're gonna have a lot less just junk being made and manufactured, and a lot more of like people getting something and holding it and saving it and passing it down to their loved ones.
Yeah, I love that. That's exciting, to see that shift in the way we consume, Yeah, thank you so much, Ivan, for sharing your insights with us today. It's clear that AI and blockchain have the potential to radically change commerce, right? As we know it. And your perspective has really helped us understand how these technologies will shape the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so fun. Honestly, I feel like we could keep going.
We could keep going.
Absolutely. And yeah, I would just like, really appreciate taking the time. And I, hope this got definitely some people thinking about their like my biggest takeaway is I want people to be able to like unlock their 8-year-old brain that was like, I think there's like when we're kids, we have this freedom that we're, able to draw and create and laugh and do all this stuff really easily and freely. And I think, that's for me of being able to let people unlock that, that youthful creativity that we all have inside of us that we haven't been able to. And so I think some of these things are just really excited that, being able to get in touch with that and explore all of these new, art forms and, all these different things. So really excited to see what people create. And love to see if you guys, if anyone wants to out there, our app is on ARQx AI. You can download it, create your own jewelry. There's a community, so you can see what other people are designing and working on. And we're actually, have a crowd funding feature that's coming out very soon, where you can actually get if you don't want to buy your piece right away, you can actually get it crowd funded and sell to other people, which is really, really cool as well. So super excited to see what people will create. And Liliana, I'd also love, we can chat offline about the banana, the banana. I'm wicked views on that. So
awesome. And for our listeners, if you want to learn more about Ivan and ARQx AI, be sure to check out the links in the show notes. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. We'll be back next week with more exciting conversations about the future of tech.